This will help. The school administrative in which a student who is deaf of hard of hearing resides shall have full access in regular environments, including the use of remote microphone technology, certified interpreters. That will be a school administrative district cost to provide equipment and interpreters. The legislature shall fund necessary services based on an individualized family service plan, an IEP plan, or a 504 plan for students in the state, regardless of the student's location. I don't have the numbers, and I meant to look that up, of how many right now deaf children we have enrolled in school. But this may also, because of how it used to be handled, you may see an increase of deaf students being served in school settings. You may, because the other wasn't always practical for everyone. LD 1523, an act to establish the Trust for a Healthy Maine, and then another bill, LD 1693, deal with the same topic. These bills establish the Trust for a Healthy Maine to receive money paid to the state pursuant to the tobacco settlements and other sources to fund tobacco use prevention and promote public health. LD 1772, an act to amend the remote meeting law and Maine's freedom of access. I don't know if you care about this, but I'll tell you about it anyway. It allows the public body to limit public attendance at a proceeding solely to remote methods if there is an emergency or urgent situation that requires the public body to meet only by remote methods. And we've lived this for the last 2 years. And that allowable exception to public meeting law is, they're hoping to get it enshrined in statute, and my guess is it will pass. We've certainly used it a lot with school boards, as you, I'm sure, are aware. LD 1775, resolve regarding Maine care funding for Maine schools. This directs the Department of Education to develop a comprehensive system to support school districts in seeking reimbursement for Maine care eligible services. Do some of you out there remember a very similar bill to this? The department's required to submit a bill or a report with suggested legislation by November 2nd. It is my understanding, and I would like to hear your comments, but I believe we are still not getting all the money on the table, largely because the reimbursement forms and the process is so cumbersome, and I don't think it's been improved. But this is an attempt to do what we didn't get done in the LePage administration, although they did try. Mary Mayhew was commissioner at the time, if I'm recalling. We were trying to fix the Maine care billing process because we're leaving money on the table. LD 777, well, I'm sorry, 1777, an act to amend the laws regarding education service centers. This bill would allow for an override of a decision that was made with voter approval to be part of a service center. It says any member may withdraw from the regional service center effective at the end of a fiscal year. Let me start over again. It says any member may withdraw from the regional service center effective at the end of the year, providing they gave written notice to other members not less than a year before the withdrawal. After notice is given, a withdrawal agreement has to be drawn up. If there is a disagreement, they have to bring in an arbitrator. You can see why I'm a little concerned, and I would assume you're going to be concerned about this. If we start pulling these apart, it will affect funding for the remaining members. So I don't know that that bill's moved yet. It doesn't look like it has, but I will keep you posted on it. LD 1789, an act to modernize funding of publicly funded tuition students attending career and technical education programs. This kind of bill has been up before. In fact, there was one last year, and then there was one a couple years before that. It deals with what I call the public privates. You know what I mean by that, right? The tuition schools, okay. It's been amended a bit, but essentially calls for a 3-year ramp up to 100% tuition for kids who are also attending a CTE. So they want 100% tuition, even though your kids are only there part of the time. We've had this before. The same bill was brought up last session, but it died. But we are right now, we have put the Commissioner of Education has put together a working group. We get together every so often in a room down at the department and are trying to iron this out. But I'm not sure they're gonna settle for anything but what they want. In which case I assume the bill will move forward. LD 1823, an act to amend the enforcement provision of the law governing earned paid leave. The Department of Labor has the exclusive authority to enforce the earned paid leave law for employers and should remain, this is our position, and should remain the enforcement agency. This bill would take enforcement out of the hands of an impartial department and put it in the hands of an arbiter. The grievance process, which will happen, this bill creates would cost school districts and by extension local taxpayers in terms of the money in the form of arbitration costs that you would have to pay. So they're turning what right now has been something that the Department of Labor handles to try to bring it into a negotiated settlement. It's got a divided report on labor. And this is one that will cost a lot of money if it goes forward, and we're going to need your help. Obviously, the union supports this bill. So.
Hey, Vicki, just to interrupt for 1 second, there's a question in the chat. Is there an ability for you to share a list of these bills that you're going over?
I'm going to send it out. I don't know that I can share it right this second.
Okay.
But the minute I get off, you're going to get what I'm just looking at. Is that okay?
Thank you.
I'm not all that good at sharing when I'm not knowing what I'm doing. So, but I'll get it to you. LD 1874, an act to clarify COVID-19 paid leave for school employees. This bill amends the existing law requiring school administrative units to restore up to 15 sick leave days used by public school employees affected by COVID to instead grant up to a maximum of 15 days of paid leave for the purposes described in the law from January 1st, 2021 until the maximum has been reached. The bill provides that a public school employee who used sick leave prior to the effective date of this legislation is entitled to request that that leave be restored. And the school administrative unit is required to comply with the request. The other uses were for things like taking care of someone else's child. Like if your daycare closed, that was one of the uses. If you couldn't come to school because your daycare was closed, or that kind of thing, or you had to take care of someone else's child, if you were a grandparent, for example. It was an ought to pass as amended earlier this week. And I need to get that amendment, and I'll send that out to you. In fact, I'll make myself a note. But we opposed the citing. I'm sorry. We oppose this, citing the memorandum of agreements that were made with schools and COVID leaves. And I'm assuming you have all of you have at least seen some of those, and some of your districts have done separate memorandums of agreements dealing with COVID leave. Yes, no, maybe, yes. And that's our argument. This was dealt with on a local level. People came together, including the union and administration, and figured this out. So why on earth does Augusta need to get involved in this at this point? They don't, but we'll see. It's a divided report already. It hasn't come out yet, but there will be some people in favor of it. LD 1901, an act to protect funding for healthcare for retired teachers by establishing an investment trust fund. This establishes the Retired Teacher Health Insurance Post-Employment Benefit Trust Fund to protect funding for health care for retired teachers by putting it in an irrevocable trust. I believe this is a very good idea. As some of you will remember, there are trusts that got tapped in years past when the state ran out of dough. And this shouldn't be one of them. And I would agree with that. And I mean, I'm not affected by it, but obviously many people are. And this should be protected money because people count on this dough. So 1901 is a very important bill. LD 1802, an act to amend requirements of the reorganization plan for the formation of regional school units. This was a department bill, actually, and it offers more flexible around grade configurations for RSUs. It allows for the group districts to come together to share a high school is largely what it tries to do, where we still have districts that have no high school. And I think in our office, we've described it as it's like the old CSD law, but that went away. It's not in statute anymore. So this, I think we support this. I'm quite sure we do support this. It hasn't come up yet. LD 1922, an act to amend certain laws pertaining to the Maine Public Employees Retirement System. This doesn't do a whole ton, but it changes it. It changed some terminology to recognize that the proper term is Education Service Center. And our understanding is it's being done in part as part of language cleanup. It also clarifies a language around participating local districts, PLDs. I don't know if we have any PLD people left out there or in this group. The PLDs that I've become aware of talking to the retirement system is one in Booth Bay Harbor and one in Cape Elizabeth. So it's cleanup language to make sure that those are still, under the law, those are still viable. 1939, this doesn't have a financial impact per se, but what's happening out there is really serious. It's an act to protect school administration officials from harassment and abuse. And it's not just, it goes all the way down to teachers, everybody in our school. As you know, right now with COVID, there can be very clear divided lines on people who agree with what we're doing and people who disagree with what we're doing. And it's gotten to the point where people are being harassed. We have heard of people coming out of a school board meeting and being basically followed to their car. So this makes it clear that protection against harassment and abuse targeting public servants, including principals, school board members, superintendents, teachers, and people in similar positions, ed techs, anybody that's working in our school, is protected. Based on our conversation with the MEA, we have asked the sponsor to clarify everybody it covers. And you should say, well, what does that do? Well, it gives us a little bit of teeth, because we've had, and I can't see everybody who's on here, but we have had reports where people have come picketed at the superintendent's house. We've certainly had people followed out of a meeting, out of a school board meeting. And this is one thing we can put up there to say, this is wrong, it's got to stop. And then I'm going to need your help on this one. This is the last one I've got. Resolve. I've got a couple governor's bills in a second, but 1935, resolve dealing with chapter 60, 61, and 125. Those are the three rules we've got, and it largely dealing with construction. And do we have any experts out there on that? If so, please email me because I'm trying to understand these rules. But I think largely what it does is put the ASHRAE standards in there. You know what I mean by ASHRAE, right? So I think it puts that in those rules, but I think they're already in there, but they may have been upgraded. So I'm trying to get a handle on that. I'm actually talking to Scott Brown on that one. The next list I have, and I don't know if you listened to the State of the State last night, but there was some money coming based on the governor's intention. Now, all this will have to go back. Clearly, most of these would require a law. But I'll tick through them. It would increase pay for childcare workers and early childhood educators. She wants to put $12 million to increase pay for that group. And I know from my buddies that work in the early childhood business, it is almost impossible to find people to do that right now. Largely part of COVID, because of pay. I mean, there are some real issues with people that we are now asking to take care of our youngest kids. So I'm letting my opinion show there. Investing in K-12 education, the Governor Mills pledged to create an education stabilization fund, capitalized with $30 million from the general fund, which is, she got, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she got almost 800 million. She got a huge amount of money from the feds, as did all the states. This is not just Maine, but she's looking for ways to put some of that money in education, and $30 million from the general fund to maintain the state's commitment to fund public schools at 55%. Yes, so now how we will do that in years forward, but I think we are on that path. I know it's in this year's budget. It was, as you know, it was in last year's budget. And so that money will be used to maintain that. The next one is to fully fund free meals. Governor Mills proposed to fully fund universal free meals in public schools consistent. Actually, it was Troy Jackson's idea, the Senate president. Does that do anything bad? I don't see the downside on that one, but that they're fully funded. Meaning, do you use that money for anything else? And if you do, shoot me an email. Experiential learning. She has charged Pendermaken, the Commissioner of Education, to design a program of experiential learning to reconnect Maine's children to the classrooms and get them outside. That's good. And the big one, and this is the one I remain hopeful. Oh, good. I'm seeing some, thank you for the stuff that's being put on the post for this. I'll grab this before I get off on the free lunch. But internet connection, we've been asking for internet connection forever across the state. It would have a huge impact on our ability to connect kids, and not just, I mean, the pandemic was the perfect example, right? There were kids that could not get online and do online classes because they didn't have internet. It also exposes regional deficiencies, you know, in certain, the North versus the South, so this could be huge. I don't know how much it's going to cost, but she pledged to have every person who wants to be connected to high-speed internet by 2024. It sounds like a huge construction project, but we have been, again, I'm repeating myself, we've been advocating for better internet connections for all our students for a long time. I think it's a game changer. And that's what I have. I don't know if there are any questions or how you guys are handling questions, but.
No, we can, if you want to ask questions, unmute. I know one of your questions to us was on free meals. I see a few responses in there. So if people want to answer that, you can unmute as well. Don't all rush at once.
Or I can just grab the comments. When is your Zoomie closed down? Not yet, right?
No, we're fine.
Okay.
We're fine. I see Pete's comment is fully funded is still less than cost. From the district I work in, that is true for us as well. And I guess for me, my comment would be, what else is tied to that? On the surface, yes, it's helpful, but I think the detail is important. What kind of funding are we talking? What does fully funded mean? And does that limit us from providing other opportunities such as a la carte, after school vending, other types of things like that? So I guess that's just my perspective, but certainly others, please jump in and provide questions and comments.
The other thing it does, which was raised by superintendents, is that you collect poverty information that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of a gentle way to do it. I mean, I know there's food shaming. We worked on that so that no one, you know, that you didn't have, everybody gets a form now, as you know. So it doesn't signal, so we're trying to not stigmatize people, but if that all went away, we would need a new poverty matrix or a way to measure, because we also apply for grants that still require poverty information. So I'll give that to this group to try to think about what other ways we could get poverty information if this if this bill goes away.
And I know for RSU 57 in both years, I mean, and I've heard from other business managers and curriculum coordinators and grant coordinators, that's been a struggle with our food service department. As much as we have been technology based and online applications and sending out instant alerts and other means of communicating with parents and guardians on getting that information, that is a direct impact on Title I, Title II, Title IV, and Title V funding. So
Right.
That does have a financial impact on schools. And to the extent that schools can't keep those free and reduced numbers to where they would have been when we were collecting that information, having folks pay, that could decrease funding for the title programs, which means then that the general fund is going to pick up that cost. So kind of around the circle, but it does have an impact. That impact could be in real dollars. And again, for me at least, and it's just one opinion, is what's the detail of that proposal? And I think that detail is critically important to whether it has a financial impact, and if so, how much is that financial impact?
Perfect. And somebody's asking about 734.
Yeah, I think there was a question about minimum wage in 734.
Yes, and I mean, the minimum wage law passed, as we know.
Is that the support staff up to $16 an hour? Because I thought it rolled over into the new year.
Let me look at that and I'll send it out. Let me get the skinny on 734 and I'll send it. I'm going to send it to you, Colin. I'm going to send stuff to you to distribute. Okay.
Yep, that's fine. And then we'll get it out through our means here.
So I need info on 734 and I'm looking at these other ones. Do I have any other questions to cost?
What about stuff that had been tabled in the last session? I know there were several that were tabled. You mentioned right to strike as one. There was a movement at one point about educational policy, and that got tabled as far as trying to get more educational policy decisions taken away from school boards. Where does that stand?
I haven't, and I had actually written something about my concern about carryover bills because there were a lot of bad ones. But
Yep.
what they seem to be doing is largely not carrying over, but reintroducing. So like the right to strike is a brand new bill.
Mhm.
But yes, it especially if they come back, and I don't know if I said this, and sorry if I'm repeating myself. Right now, they're only coming back in one day a week.
Yep.
But I'm hearing they're going to come back in. They want to come back in full time. And if that happens, all bets are off. They could then revisit a lot of carryovers.
You just explain the process for us so we understand what happens with a carryover bill. Does it die? Does it have to be re-brought up in order to be addressed? What is that process, Vicki?
If the labor committee, I'm going to use the labor committee as an example where most of the carryover bills that I'm scared of are, they never let them leave committee. So the committee is still in possession.
Okay.
In labor. With the carryover bills that didn't get, they have to be, they live with certain committees. They don't live with certain committees. They would have to be reassigned. And I don't know exactly how that works. But they can be done, but it's not as easy as, it is more complicated than what the Labor Committee did, which was just to hold on to them instead of voting to carry them over. But they're not dead. They can be resurrected. It will just be a little more complicated to get them back before the committee. I have not seen, what I have seen more of is what I said. Those that were afraid that the carryovers wouldn't go anywhere resubmitted their titles. Some actually resubmitted the same exact bill.
Okay.
But truly, as this gets, if this gets more active, because they're actually going to be able to meet, I will alert you on things that I see coming. Because I think the trickle is quite, we're shocked at how slow the introduction of bills is right now. And there could be an avalanche, Kellen, is what I'm saying.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other folks, questions, either in the chat or unmute yourself. I'm trying to, at the same time, look through the chat. Zach's asking, money being shifted to families. EPL and arbitration question mark. Zach, do you want to unmute and describe that a little more?
Sure. I don't know if you can see me. Hey, so free lunch for everybody. Like I get free lunch now, but you know, we could always afford my kids' lunch. So you're creating a transfer of wealth from people that the free and reduced were already free, and now everybody's free. So now there's this pot of money that the state maybe could use to direct more direct assistance to families that really need it, as opposed to just, you know, giving money to the guy that drives a Tesla and drops off his kids. So that's just my point there. And then I thought there was an EPL law that had to deal with EPL now being like part of the DOL and arbitration if the employee feels they've been violated.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
Okay.
Let me,
You mentioned that as 1823, correct, Vicki?
correct.
Okay.
Yes. That is a, yes.
So that's where that resides. Zach is in 1823.
All right.
Other folks, questions, comments, or thoughts? We will certainly be in touch with Vicki as this session moves forward. We'll certainly be evaluating. Again, if you feel that this is helpful to you, if you feel at the April meeting we should have Vicki back again or not, email us at the MeASBO website. Let us know what your thoughts are if this is helpful. I guess one last thought or question from me, Vicki, is that the past couple of years have been extraordinarily busy. You've mentioned in conversations that you and I have had privately about the amount of lobbying that's being done, the amount of out-of-state lobbyists that certain organizations have paid for to bring into Maine on various education items. Do you see and anticipate that same level as the past 2 or 3 years? I know you mentioned it's quiet right now. What's the undertone? What are you hearing? And what should we as business managers be taken away? Because I hear if it's getting quieter, that means that, you know, what was brought up the past 2 years and didn't pass maybe is just going to die and it's just not going to come back right away. Then is that something we can assume or not?
I think we're all playing nice in the sandbox right now.
Okay.
I think all bets are off once we come back for real. I'm being a little facetious. We have actually, the last 2 years has allowed us to have a much better communication with the Maine Education Association, for example. We meet every week with them on Zoom and other educational partners, but the Maine Principals Association, the Maine Education Association, and our association and other invited guests have a Zoom meeting every week. I can't tell you what, it has improved our relationships in a weird sort of way, even better than if we were, eyeing each other in the halls. So that said, I think if they want to, of course, they still want what they want. I think raising the teacher salary helped a lot. Because that was always one of the large, that was always a significant item they would bring up, was low teacher pay. And I'm sure that some people still think it's too low, but we have the 40, and that, as you know, moved everything up with it, or will move everything up with it. But I think the labor bills could still come back and get us. Because that's what they do, and this is what we do. And I don't mean that in a cynical way. Does that make sense, what I just said?
Yep.
Okay.
One last follow-up. Any chance that earned paid leave is ever going to go away, or are we as business managers going to have to continue to deal with it? Is there any movement in saying that school districts provide a lot of leave either in their negotiated bargaining agreements or in their at-will employees, and this really doesn't apply to schools? Is there any movement in that direction? Because I know from business managers that reach out to us as a group, this continues to be a significant burden on business managers and business office staff to manage.
I'm always honest with you. I don't think it changes when you have the majority Democrats in the House and the Senate. That's not a diss on them. This is a big bill for them. It's a big bill for labor. If you have a change in administration, but typically it is easier to stop a bad bill from becoming law than it is to take one off the books. But I will talk to my people too, to see what they think.
I just think from an association standpoint, we have to, and we're very direct with you as well. This is a law that is extremely, extremely burdensome.
Right.
To school districts.
And Deb Roberts explained, Deb's been really helpful in our testimony on that, what it makes us do, bend over backwards. I mean, it's really, yes. Because you have to calculate it incrementally, right?
Well, you have to decide how you're going to track it, and each school is going to do that, how they end in bargaining. Obviously, it has to be an item of bargaining, and it has to get bargained into contracts, how that's going to happen. And to do that, on how many union agreements you have, you could have multiple or several multiple ways of needing to track that.
You've just given me you've just given me a great idea. One thing we might want to do, it will never go away per se, but we could recommend, let me talk to Deb and Steve and Eileen, a better way to do it. Because it's crazy the way the way it was mandated to be done has created a lot of work, and it doesn't help anybody really. So while we won't get rid of the law, if we can improve the process of it, you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Let me talk to them about it.
And I'd be more than happy, or I'm sure other business managers would be more than happy to provide input and feedback to your group. You just mentioned you, Steve, Deb, and Eileen. We certainly would be very happy to have further discussions around that as well.
I love this. So let me talk to them. It probably wouldn't happen this year, but I don't know. Who knows? But let me talk to them, because what you know where I'm saying. Some people don't want to fix a bad book. I always say, don't fix a bad bill. Well, we already have a bad law, so maybe we want to fix a bad law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Folks, other comments, or, some folks may have a different take on some of what I just said. So please feel free to jump in and say, hey, that's not how I see it, or that is how I see it.
And I see the comment, and we agree that the subs and coaches EPL is especially ridiculous. You got it. And that we really thought we could get them to see that. But
anybody else want to have any more questions or say anything before Vicki leaves? Vicki, you can tell from the chat, we really appreciate you coming. We appreciate your expertise and all the hours you put in helping to support what schools do in Maine and making sure that the laws are manageable for us. So thank you.
And you know, and don't tell the others, you're my favorite group. No, I do. I always learn from you. I always learn from you.
Thank you so much, Vicki.
Thank you, guys.
I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hopefully you all found the sessions this morning helpful, worth your time. We certainly have tried our best as a committee to reach out, get your input, try to see about things that you may want to hear about. Please feel free to message us, let us know. Is it worth bringing Vicki back in April? Is it worth talking more, even if it's not April? Obviously, that's too late, but in an earlier session on ESSER performance reporting, should we bring Pender back to present in April and get more information and hear from her directly? I think we've built as a group of business managers representing school districts. We've grown in our communication between various groups, whether it's DOE, MSMA, the commissioner's office. And I think that's good for all of us as business managers. It's given us a voice. It's allowed us to be heard and to provide input and meaningful input into what happens at a state level. Is it perfect? No. Has it improved? I think we as an executive committee feel so, but let us know. Let us know how you feel. Before we leave today, certainly want to open up for any other questions, comments that you folks have. You can either put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and let us know. I do see having Pender back, but folks submit questions. We certainly can do that as well.
Colin?
Colin,
Yes,
I
Scott.
think one of the challenges has been Vicki is that she doesn't get to us in a timely manner so that we can give her reactions on a lot of the bills. So I do think that we need to make sure she asks us the questions before the MSMA makes an opinion on how we should move forward. So that I think would be really helpful.
I have shared that with Vicki and with Steve and Eileen in the past. And that continues to be one of those that we try our best. To be honest with you, part of how fast some of the bills move and when a committee hears a bill, it would be really helpful to have more representation from our membership to be able to do that. I'm not saying that's the only thing that's holding that up, Diane, but it certainly would be helpful. And we will continue to work exactly towards what you're saying. Yes, Scott.
Colin, in looking for topics for professional development, I would suggest that you look at the certification standards. Certification was really built as a roadmap for professional development.
Okay.
I think there are several, actually probably over 100 topics sitting there.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And I saw Lucy taking notes while you said that, Scott. So I'm sure she and that committee will take that under consideration too. Other folks? You know how to reach out either in the forum, by email. We certainly want to hear from you. We will be planning April's topics here probably in early March because there won't be much time before that meeting. In the meantime, I will talk to Shelley more about performance reporting. I did want to report, and I don't know if Andrea or Lucy have more to say, or for folks who attended the roundtable with Cheryl Lang and her team on billing. Cheryl and I have had many conversations about billing and invoicing with DOE, which is what kind of sparked the roundtable. Going back to the fall and early winter, Cheryl and I have had many conversations about some of the problems and issues and concerns in the invoicing. I don't know, Andrea and Lucy, if you have anything to say about that. I was not able to attend that, but do you have anything you want to add about that roundtable? Just so I want folks to know that we truly reached out to have representation and try to have our voice heard in regards to those billings.
So the biggest concern for me was the amount of time that it took the department to approve those invoices. And then the amount of time, they've added a new step in grants for me. Now DAFS has also needs to approve. So things are taking forever to be reimbursed. And I expressed my concern with that. She said that the department, they're behind. I think they've had some staff, either shortages or illnesses, but they are trying to catch up. But it is taking a long time for things to be processed. And I'm able to get things through the system. It just seems that reimbursement takes forever. So that was my main concern.
There were several other business managers who were in attendance as well, and were able to share what issues they've run into and what their concerns are as well. So it was nice that we had so many people available to be there, and it wasn't just two of us saying it. There was a large number of people giving them the same feedback, both in the time frame for the reviews and the reimbursements. We also talked about how entering in the expenditures, instead of putting in, this is the amount we're requesting reimbursement for, they want us to put in the year-to-date expenditures. And then on the next page, it says, this is what you're asking, which the system will generate for you. And we expressed how we thought that was kind of a little backwards. And I think they shared that they had talked with other states, and the way they implemented it for Maine is the way other states had liked it. You know, I think some people now were used to it. So some folks in Maine are like, no, it works this way now. I redesigned my spreadsheet to meet the way they're asking. But it's not intuitive. And so we expressed that. But I don't think there was any intention to change it. I think they were just explaining their reasoning behind the way it was put together. And if there were other business managers that attended that want to share as well, feel free to speak up.
And we've also talked to Cheryl about the proration of reimbursements between various titles as well. And that I think for the majority that I've talked to of business managers, that's not intuitive either in how we function internally within our business offices. Yeah, Natasha, that was another item that came up, not being able to enter a new invoice until the other one has been paid. I can tell you, at least I think for me, Lucy and Andrea, who've been the ones most intimately involved in this, we've tried to advocate as much as we possibly can to express all of these concerns. I'm not sure it's going to change anything. I'm getting the sense it isn't, but it's not for a lack of trying. I will say that. Other folks who attended or others who have questions about this particular item?
I would agree with Andrew. I think a big part of the problem is the turnaround. And what I've been running into lately, and it's very frustrating to me, is invoices are getting flagged that they don't reconcile to the general ledger when they do. And you can never get a person at Department of Ed. So you have to put it in the comments and ask why they think that it doesn't reconcile. And then it starts the process all over. So you're literally another 4 or 5. I mean, I have 2 invoices right now that are sitting out there for 3 weeks. And it's the second pass through, and there was nothing wrong with them for the first pass. And I don't know why all of a sudden people are not being able to read the trial balance or the, account history, or I don't know what's causing it, but it's happened to me 3 times in the last 2 months where the response is that the trial balance doesn't match the invoice, and that's why they're rejecting it when it does total.
Thank you, Kelly. And that's not the first time I've heard that. I just heard that from someone yesterday as well. And that certainly is not just your frustration, it's several others as well.
Does anyone know if the department intends to go back to work in Augusta, or is staying home part of the permanent operating procedures? Is this how they're going to operate from now on? Does anybody know that?
I think
do
they were
know.
redoing their offices as one, so I don't think there's a plan to go back anytime soon. They've really let them all set up home offices and given them stuff to do that, so.
I was told by the superintendents that they've also addressed this with the commissioner, and that the commissioner's response is that they have been told that people are more efficient at home and most likely no one will be returning to the office. But the frustration that we have in the field is then you never can get anybody. You know, when you call someone and it takes 3 to 6 days to get a returned phone call, I didn't even know what I called them about. So I think if they're going to work from home, then it needs to be like child nutrition, where you have a direct line to reach them. At least child nutrition provided everyone with either their phones are being rolled forward or you have a cell phone to reach someone, because Walter was pretty open about they're not coming back in the office. And maybe that's something we could address with Pender if she were to come to our meeting.
Thank you, Kelly. And we'll certainly work that in from Andrea, Lucy, and I in what we get from the Commissioners Roundtable every other Thursday. Although those meetings are somewhat very structured in how they're conducted, and it's not a free ability for us to input. There's other ways that we can still input them and still have concerns addressed. So let Lucy, Andrea, and I talk a little more about those, but appreciate that, Kelly, very much. Other folks? I really hope this morning was helpful. I know it's a lot of time, but hopefully we presented topics that you feel really had an interest for you. You got meaning and purpose out of, and was worth 3 hours out of your workday to attend. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask executive committee members to stay on this link for literally 2 minutes after. So if you could just hang out on this same link, please. And thank you all for attending today. We really appreciate it. And please keep in touch with us and let us know what your thoughts are and other topics for the future. Have a great weekend, folks.
You want to stop recording?
Yeah, I got to hit the right button.
I'll let you.